I'd always thought my days in the field were behind me. After a decade working high-profile cases for the Department of Justice, I'd grown used to courtrooms, briefings, and endless stacks of paperwork. But this assignment was different, personal, in a way most cases weren't. The investigation was centered around a law firm with a reputation for bending the rules when it suited them. I'd been sent undercover, this time as someone almost invisible, the overnight janitor. My credentials, my suits, and even my name were all locked away. For the next few weeks, I was just Roy, mopping floors and emptying bins while I watched and listened. On my third night, I was scrubbing a coffee stain off the marble in the lobby when I heard sharp footsteps echoing through the hall. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the stain, pretending I didn't notice the expensive shoes stopping just a few feet from my mop. A woman's voice cut through the silence, crisp and impatient. "You missed a spot." Typical. You people never pay attention to the details. I straightened, mop in hand, and met her gaze. She was tall, with perfectly tailored clothes and an expression that suggested she'd never mopped a floor in her life. I nodded, quietly moving to clean the area she'd indicated, careful to play the part. She scoffed, shaking her head. "Unbelievable. I swear, this place has gone downhill since they started hiring anyone off the street." I could feel the heat rise in my chest, but I kept my tone even. "Sorry, ma'am. I'll make sure it's spotless." She rolled her eyes and strode off, high heels clicking with every step, leaving a trail of contempt in her wake. Little did she know, I wasn't just here to mop the floors, I was here to clean up something much bigger. I finished the lobby, replaying the exchange in my mind. Every undercover assignment came with challenges, but something about her tone bothered me more than usual. Maybe it was how quickly she dismissed me, how sure she was that I belonged nowhere near her world. I kept my head down as I made my rounds, pushing my cart past closed office doors and hushed voices drifting through the glass. The law firm's after-hours energy was different, more honest, in a way. People forgot the janitor might be listening. By midnight, the main floor was quiet. I made my way to the executive conference room, where the same woman now sat at the head of a long polished table, laptop open, papers scattered. She was alone, typing furiously, frustration written all over her face. I entered quietly, broom in hand. She barely looked up. Careful not to scratch the floor. Last time, someone left streaks all over my section. "Yes, ma'am." I began sweeping, making sure to stay within her line of sight, just another invisible worker in her world. She continued working, muttering to herself about deadlines and incompetence. Then her phone rang. She snatched it up, voice dropping to a sharp whisper. "No, I'm telling you, he doesn't suspect a thing. If the paperwork disappears tonight, it's on the cleaning staff, not us." I kept sweeping, careful not to react, but my heart picked up speed. She was careless, arrogant, and, if I'd heard right, involved in the very fraud my team suspected. She finished the call, snapped her laptop shut, and gathered her things. As she stood to leave, she shot me one last look, smirking. "Try not to make a mess of the place, Roy. We like things neat around here." She swept past me, leaving the faint scent of expensive perfume and secrets behind. I checked the cameras hidden in my cart and whispered into my collar mic, "Suspect just confirmed involvement. We move soon." The janitor was about to turn the tables. I waited until the hallways were empty and the last echoes of her heels faded. Then I moved quickly, opening my cart and pulling out a tiny flash drive. My cover gave me access to every office under the guise of cleaning. Tonight, it was my key to gathering proof. The executive conference room still hummed with the faint heat of her laptop. I plugged in the drive, searching for the files her call had hinted at. Emails, bank records, documents marked confidential, all of it right there, hidden in plain sight. My earpiece crackled. "Roy, status update," my handler's voice whispered. "Got it," I replied, copying everything to the drive. "Suspect's laptop is a goldmine. She doesn't realize how much she's left exposed. A soft click at the door. I froze, heart pounding. The woman stepped back in, startled to find me behind the desk. For a split second, she stared, suspicion flickering across her face. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, voice edged with disbelief. I raised the dust rag in my hand, improvising. "Sorry, ma'am, just dusting. Didn't want to disturb your work earlier." She narrowed her eyes, studying me. "Just, don't touch anything important." "Yes, ma'am," I replied, voice steady. She gathered a folder, cast one last cold glance, and swept out again. I released a slow breath, adrenaline surging. The files finished transferring. The case against her was building. She had no idea the quiet janitor she mocked was already steps ahead. I made my way back to the maintenance closet, every step careful and measured. I slipped the flash drive into a hidden pouch inside my overalls and double-checked the concealed camera feed. Everything was recorded, her call, her attitude, even her careless words about losing paperwork. I could hear voices near the break room as I passed, 2 junior associates complaining about late nights and demanding bosses. Nobody paid attention to the janitor rolling his cart past. As I reached the rear exit, my phone buzzed, an encrypted text from the lead agent on my team: "Move tonight. Building surveillance going live. Confirm drop-off." I typed back, "Confirmed. Evidence secured. Suspect is still in building. Will signal if she tries to leave with files." I lingered in the shadows just outside the conference room, cleaning supplies in hand, blending in as always. A few minutes later, the lawyer reappeared, arms loaded with folders and a look of absolute confidence. She didn't even glance my way. But as she hurried toward the elevators, she was intercepted by security, 2 agents from my team now in uniform. "Ma'am, we need to check those files before you leave the premises." "Standard procedure tonight," one said politely but firmly. She bristled. "I'm a senior partner. No one checks my files." He smiled, unshaken. "Tonight, everyone does." She turned, looking for someone to back her up, anyone at all. For a brief moment, her gaze landed on me. She saw only the janitor, silent and unimportant. She had no idea her night was about to unravel. She bristled at the security agents, her voice rising just enough to turn heads. "This is outrageous. I'll have your jobs for this. Do you know who I am?" My teammates didn't flinch. "Just following protocol, ma'am. Please, this way." She stormed toward the lobby, folder clutched tight, every movement sharp with indignation. I trailed behind with my cart, blending into the scenery. For the first time, she looked genuinely rattled. At the security checkpoint, she tried again to assert control. "Call your supervisor. Now." One agent tapped his radio. "Supervisor is on the way." A minute later, I stepped forward, quietly removing my work gloves. I could feel her glare as she realized I wasn't just another janitor. I reached into my overalls, pulled out my badge, and held it up. Her jaw dropped. "What is this, some kind of joke?" I locked eyes with her, voice calm and clear. "I'm not Roy the janitor. My name is Marcus Fielding, Assistant U.S. Attorney. You're under investigation for federal fraud and obstruction of justice. Everything you did tonight was recorded." For a moment, the lobby was silent, every security guard, every late-night employee staring as the truth settled in. The woman who had spent the night looking down on the janitor now stood frozen, realizing her mistake in front of everyone. "Ma'am, please hand over the documents," I said, my badge glinting under the lobby lights. She didn't move, the confidence she'd carried all night evaporating in an instant. The tension in the lobby was so thick you could feel it in the air. For a long second, she just stood there, clutching the folders to her chest, her face pale and stunned. The entire building seemed to hold its breath. Finally, with a trembling hand, she released her grip and handed the documents to the agent beside me. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, was barely above a whisper. "This is a mistake. You can't do this to me." I kept my tone professional. "This investigation has been underway for months. We have everything we need, recordings, documents, witness statements. You're not the only one involved, but you are the one who got careless." She glanced around, suddenly aware of the crowd that had gathered, a mix of staff and junior lawyers, all watching the downfall of someone they'd learned to fear. "Escort her to a conference room," I instructed my team. "We'll be conducting formal interviews tonight." She didn't argue. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by the realization that the person she'd dismissed as a nobody was actually the one orchestrating her downfall. As she was led away, I took a breath and looked around at the stunned faces. For the first time all week, I stood tall, not as a janitor, but as the federal prosecutor who had just closed the biggest case of my career. As the doors closed behind the security team and the lawyer, I handed the flash drive to the lead investigator. "Here's everything from her laptop. There's more," she discussed destroying evidence on a phone call. "The recording is on the cart camera." He nodded, giving me a look of respect I hadn't seen in days. "Nice work, Marcus. We'll process it all tonight." I turned to leave the lobby, but a few of the junior staff members hesitantly approached. One of them, a young paralegal, looked both amazed and embarrassed. "Sir, we had no idea. I'm sorry for how some people treated you." I gave a small, understanding nod. You never know who's watching, or who's listening. In my experience, real character shows when you think no one important is around. With the crowd dispersing, I made my way outside, finally shedding the disguise that had let me blend into the background for weeks. The night air felt different, lighter, cleaner, now that the firm's secret was out. My phone buzzed again. Another case, another assignment already waiting. But tonight, I allowed myself a rare smile. Justice didn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it wore overalls and pushed a mop, until the moment it needed to reveal the badge. A light drizzle had started by the time I stepped into the empty street, the city lights shimmering on wet pavement. My coveralls felt heavier now, every stain and scuff a reminder of the lengths justice sometimes demanded. I pulled out my phone, already getting updates from the team inside. Arrests were underway, evidence being catalogued, more names cropping up as the investigation deepened. I leaned against a lamppost, watching the building I'd cleaned for weeks, now, at last, swept clean of more than dust. For all the arrogance and dismissiveness I'd endured, the satisfaction of the job done right outweighed it all. A call came through. It was my supervisor, her tone brimming with approval. "You handled it perfectly, Marcus. The higher-ups are already talking commendation." I chuckled, glancing at the city skyline. "Let's save the speeches for the courtroom. There's still work to finish." She paused. "You know, we couldn't have done this without someone willing to get their hands dirty." I smiled, feeling the tension finally ease from my shoulders. That's what undercover means. Sometimes, the best way to see the truth is to stand where nobody's looking. With one last look at the building, I turned and walked away into the rain, blending back into the city, one more shadow in the night, always watching, always listening. But now, at least for tonight, I could rest knowing the case was closed. Justice had been served, not from behind a desk, but from the ground up, by a janitor nobody noticed, until it was too late. A few days later, the law firm was buzzing with rumors and fallout. News of the federal investigation had broken across every major network. The once invincible lawyer was now facing a long list of charges, her image on the morning news a far cry from the smug, untouchable figure she'd been just nights before. I sat across from the district attorney, my real name finally restored, dressed in a crisp suit instead of work overalls. The DA reviewed the files, then glanced up at me, a rare smile on his face. "You went above and beyond, Marcus. We've already flipped 2 of her partners." The entire operation would have stayed hidden if you hadn't taken this assignment yourself. I nodded, accepting the gratitude with the quiet satisfaction only the undercover life could bring. I thought about all the moments I'd been ignored, underestimated, even mocked. Those memories didn't sting anymore, they reminded me of why I did this job. Justice wasn't about the spotlight, it was about doing the right thing, even when nobody was watching. As I left the office, I passed by a group of building staff on their lunch break. One of the janitors caught my eye and gave a small, respectful nod, the kind people reserve for someone who's proven themselves. I returned the gesture, heading out into the daylight. I had a new case file in hand, another assignment waiting. But this one, I thought, would be hard to top. In the end, it wasn't the badge or the title that made the difference. Sometimes, it was the willingness to do the unnoticed work, to listen, observe, and act when the time was right. That's how you bring down giants. That's how you keep justice alive. And that's how a janitor nobody noticed helped restore the law, one quiet night at a time.